Joining. Welcome everybody to our Creative Women's Coffee number 5. Woo! This is my weekly measure of how long I've been in quarantine in Delaware. But this is going to be the best one yet because you've got our mama, Kim Fortunato, on the other side. So we will just wait for people to join as we speak these next few minutes. How is everybody doing? I hope everybody's enjoying. At least we've got spring weather in quarantine right now. Yes. It's making things a lot better, at least for us.
Exactly. We're so excited about today's chat, especially in honor of Mother's Day. It's been a silver lining of quarantine, being out of New York, being able to spend some time with our mom and get tips on third trimester of pregnancy and all of that. So that's one blessing to being out of the city.
Okay, so for people who are just joining, we're going to start in a minute. As a quick reminder, feel free to use gallery view so you can see both Lizzie and me and our mom, Kim, at the same time. Feel free to use the Q&A button to submit questions as we go. If this is your first Creative Women's Coffee with us, this is a very informal dialogue. We really want to welcome everybody to it and let you guys submit questions if you'd like. So let's see, Lizzie just hit something funny. I don't know what she's doing. Okay, there we go. So submit questions as we go. We're going to be talking about motherhood. We're going to be talking about our mom's career, which is incredibly impressive in itself and could be its own conversation. And we're going to be talking about the fact that Lizzie and I are expecting and yet have no idea what to expect. So without further ado, everybody, we've got Kim Fortunato, our mom, and our best friend on the other side. And she is the ultimate girl boss. She is a constant support to us. She raised us and continues to raise us, but did go back to work after about a 15-year hiatus while we were in lower school and middle school. And now she has a very impressive career. She's the first female president of the Campbell Soup Foundation, which is obviously a Fortune 500 company, and to be the first female president of the foundation is amazing. She's on the front line of fighting COVID in terms of getting food access to people who don't have the access that a lot of us take for granted. So we also have a brother, I should mention. Alex gets no airtime, but there are 3 kids. She had 3 kids under 2 years old. She's going to tell us a lot about that. I think that many of you saw the Instagram caption where I am the bonus baby. Lizzie was the only baby expected. So let's just kick it off there. Can you quickly tell us your birth story, Mom?
Sure. And thank you guys for inviting me. It's so great to be here celebrating you and motherhood and all the mothers out there on the phone too. Happy early Mother's Day to all of you. So my birth story, I know people think, what were you, born last century or something? Well, indeed, I was born last century, even though it wasn't 100 years ago. My birth story is really personal because I grew up with a sister who was severely disabled. And 35 years ago, they didn't know the cause of Gwen's condition, which was spina bifida, and the choices and options they gave me as a young, newly pregnant woman just were not good choices for me. Furthermore, the testing that you all have today was not nearly so advanced then. So the tests were limited and the choices were not options as far as I was concerned. And I was 27 and very healthy. And I said, despite probably some hesitation from my doctor, my former husband, and my father, that we would be having no tests at all.
Living in New York, Lizzie and I can't imagine because we've had 1 bazillion tests as 35-year-old geriatrics.
Yeah, so going through 9 months of pregnancy, I was really sick the first trimester. I lost about 7 pounds, so there was one indicator. I swam my second and third trimesters, so I was really fit. I sat for the bar exam at 8 months. PS did not pass the 3rd day of the 3-day exam. And then, lo and behold, went into labor and had you guys on my due date. So carried full-term twins. What a surprise.
But can you just, for everybody else who hasn't heard it, Lizzie was Elizabeth at the time, was delivered, and then what did the doctor say?
So some of the gory details Catherine wants me to share. As I went into the hospital and they were measuring my belly, they said, wow, you're gonna have a 12-pound baby. And I was tiny in those days. It's like, holy cow, how am I going to ever do that? And after several hours of labor, Elizabeth was born, and they said, "Congratulations, you have a daughter. She weighs 6 pounds." I was like, "Oh no, I have a lot of weight to lose." And then the doctor said, "Well, actually, you feel another head in here." And I said, "Bill, that's a really bad joke to play on someone after 8 hours of labor." And he said, "No, no, no, Kim, I'm not joking." And the delivery room then filled with about 20 people. And because I had had an epidural and I had no more muscle control, I had to have nurses stand on the bed that I was lying on and physically push Catherine out of me.
Here I am, the bonus baby, 35 years later.
So she really earned her name, the bonus baby, and it is so wild. When I got my first scan with my doctor, I said, "Are you sure it's not twins? Are you sure it's not twins?" And she said, "I'm positive." And she was, wondering why I was so suspicious. But after you have a surprise baby come out, you have to ask that question, I think.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's crazy. So speaking of all this testing or lack of testing that you had, we've been talking a lot about the technology these days and how different our pregnancies are. You were younger than we are. We're considered geriatrics. Most of our friends have kids. I don't know if most of your friends had kids when you were pregnant. So we kind of have some guidance in terms of our friends, but we also have been incredibly focused on our small business these past few months. Catherine and I had intended on spending a lot of time preparing for maternity leave, and instead we've spent a lot of time dealing with COVID and a small business. So in some ways we don't feel that prepared. Talk to us a little bit about whether you were prepared. Like, did you know what to expect when you were expecting? Does anyone really? What was your experience like? Did you have friends who were guiding you through it?
Lizzie, it's a good question. Does anybody ever know what to expect? I'm not so sure having children is anything you can truly prepare for until that child or children are in your arms. You can certainly read a lot. I don't think I read as much as perhaps I wanted to. I was in a law firm, a new young lawyer at the time, so I was trying to keep my own career going in between being sick for the first 3 months. So I probably didn't read as much as I wanted. A few of my friends, your good friend Susan Delonzo is 9 months older than you, so she had been born. Her mother is a lifelong friend. So I had some guidance, and I think the majority of my friends were probably having babies. But to be honest, not unlike you, I was really focused on my legal practice, on trying to stay healthy. Unfortunately, for you all, this whole pandemic has added a whole new level and layer of, I think, uncertainty and fear and health concerns, certainly that I didn't worry about. But I don't know that, I wouldn't say I was any more prepared than you guys are. I think you're as well prepared probably as anyone could be.
That makes us feel better.
Considering we're not prepared at all.
Considering we're not prepared at all. Our good friend Tara Gilson, who has almost a 1-year-old, spent a lot of time texting us this morning about things to know. And we have another dear friend, Ann Volk, who's been sending us lists of what we need to buy, but I haven't bought any of it yet, Ann. Don't get mad.
So you didn't do too much in advance, but then once you had us, I mean, obviously you weren't expecting 2, so that was in itself crazy. But how do you feel like the adjustment went? We talked so much about the pressures being different because there was a lot less technology. You weren't expected to be tied to a computer with emails. Right. You had another child less than 2 years later. You didn't have a baby nurse, or a lot of the creature comforts that in New York are sort of taken for granted. So how would you describe those first 2 years of your life when Lizzie and I and then Alex were all sort of infants? Did you just kind of put the career on the back burner and say, this is my focus and I'm just going to survive? Or were you chill? Did you take us to restaurants? How did you react to it all?
Well, I was really fortunate because I worked for a law firm that was incredibly generous in time. And I didn't know how much time I would take off after having you. And of course, I only expected to have one child. Upon having both of you, I told the law firm I would be taking a year off. And
that looks pretty good compared to the 6 weeks that we've allocated.
Yeah, it was a little bit different approach, I guess. And they were wonderful and said, take as much time as you want. And truly, I didn't know what to expect. And with twins, I nursed you both for the first 6 months. I didn't do anything except take care of you, try to nap when you napped, and nurse you, and then try to get you to sleep through the night, which took 6 months. It only took 6 weeks with Alex, by the way. I think you guys were hungry. So also 35 years ago, we didn't go out. First of all, we didn't go out to restaurants as much as our society does today. Secondly, when we did, it was date night for Daddy and me. It was like, no, you guys were not coming to restaurants.
Were you nervous to leave us with if you were going to have a date night, were you nervous to leave us in the beginning? Like, were you, I mean, these days you have a cell phone, you have monitors, you have everything, but were you scared to leave?
I don't think I left for the first year.
Oh, well.
I'll be leaving for the date night.
We're not supposed to use names for privacy reasons, but we have our one of our first babysitters just joined the Zoom. So I almost wish she could chime in. She'll have to chat. She'll have to chat us if Mom's saying anything that's inaccurate. I think you left Alex with her when he was only 6 weeks old.
Well, also, unlike my pregnancy with you, and after Alex was born, I went back to the law firm in 6 weeks. Now, Alex was sleeping through the night, and he was also a bigger baby. So I would go back to work from like, I don't know, 9 to 1. And we had a nanny who came, and Alex would wait until I got home to nurse. So Alex was a really flexible baby and easy. So going back to work after Alex was a little bit of just sanity time for me, having 3 kids in diapers, 3 kids under 2. I cherished my time at the law firm after Alex was born.
How did the law firm work? When you said you wanted a year off, was that unpaid, but they would hold your position? Did you get disability? I'm only asking for all the people out there who are kind of wondering how you balance maternity leave. Lizzie and I are in a unique situation because, we own our business, but how does it work in a corporate?
Yeah, and I think, again, it was a long time ago, and I think it was a lot more flexible in some ways. I was clerking for them the summer that I was pregnant with you all, so I wasn't practicing full time for them anyway, and they knew I was expecting, so I don't think I had benefits at that point, or even probably a contract, and they just said, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready to come back, come back.
Got it. So you had that flexibility.
And it was also a different era of law practice, as some of your lawyer friends know.
Right. Okay, so fast forwarding to when we were, little kids, Catherine and I are wondering, what are some of your favorite memories of when we were little kids? And also, more importantly, were we always as inseparable as we are now?
Well, some of my favorite memories are, I can remember going shopping, and you were little, like 4 or 5, so I wouldn't take you with me, but I would go shopping and I would buy each of you like maybe 6 outfits apiece, and they were all coordinated outfits, and they had matching headbands and sweaters with the shorts and little socks that matched, and we would spread them on each of your beds, and you guys would be so excited. You'd be jumping up and down, showing each other the outfits, so excited. And then when Daddy came home from his dental office, you would have to do a whole fashion show for Daddy about all the beautiful things you got. And of course, you wanted to wear like everything at once.
So nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed.
The fashion came early.
The fashion shows came early and never stopped.
And I remember you saying sometimes you would put us down for naps, and obviously we were either in the same crib or twin beds, and we tended to chat either during nap time or when we were supposed to go to bed as we got older, to the point where you had to threaten to separate us if we didn't stop chit-chatting through the nap time.
Well, yeah, and even when you were in your cribs, but old enough to be climbing in and out of your cribs, I would often come in to check on you, and you were together in one crib.
That's great.
All up together. So yeah, I would say you were pretty inseparable, always.
Speaking of the nursery and being in the same crib, we just had a good question come in, which is, how did you scram to get your nursery ready for 2 babies when you were only expecting 1?
Well, I'm so glad somebody asked that question, because my father's mother, Grandma Paula, worked at Bloomingdale's in New York City. My little Jewish grandmother worked at Bloomingdale's in New York City almost until she was 80. And she provided the total layette, so all of the nursery supplies for me as a baby present. And I think my father, upon knowledge that, and they were at the hospital, so they had firsthand knowledge of you girls, which is also a good story, called his mother and said, "Ma, go back to Bloomingdale's, buy a second layette for Kim. She's had twins. And sure enough, she did. And everybody, often asks that question, what did you do? You only had one car seat. You only had one crib. I said, you know something? At that point, it was not my problem. It was everybody else's problem.
So dad or someone had to go get another car seat before you could even take us home from the hospital.
Yes.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Right.
It actually makes me feel so much better because as we've said, we haven't bought anything. We haven't done anything. So at least I'll be further ahead than you who bought it day of. That makes me feel so much better.
And then what about as you were raising us, how were we similar versus different? So, I mean, today, a lot of our followers and a lot of the people in this conversation know from a business perspective, I handle the finances, the sales, the operations. Lizzie handles the creative and is definitely the sort of artistic side of the brain. And even growing up, I mean, Lizzie played piano. I liked math. We had different interests. But at a young age, sort of before those academic traits sort of evolved, could you tell that we were different, or as babies and sort of young kids, did we act really similar?
Yeah, well, one thing I think is important to note is that we never dressed you the same. So from the start, we wanted you to develop your own identities. And when you were really little, you played, I think you pretty much played with the same things, were interested in the same things. But as you got even, to 4 or 5 or 6, Lizzie was sketching and cartooning at a very young age. And Catherine, while you like the color, I'm not so sure you were as creative and drawing cartoons, which later turned into fashion drawings. And of course, you were always interested in dance and gymnastics. And Elizabeth, didn't pursue those interests. We also made a really concerted effort to encourage each of you to pursue your own interests so you could have your individual lives. Also, because you were in a relatively small K-12 school environment, we always had you in separate classes within your grade. And again, to give you a sense of identity, and having done that was great, but you both, it didn't really matter because you both found ways to be together all the time anyway.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for that. I honestly think that's what's allowed us to work together. Had we maybe pursued the same thing or been more competitive growing up, I think we would have been way less apt to start a business together. But given that Catherine excelled so much at math and I was more focused on creative, it really set the stage for us being able to complement each other and work together now. And to be honest, we don't overlap in our roles now. So many people ask how we have a small business together, but like Catherine does her thing all day, I do my thing all day, and we don't really want to step on each other's toes because I don't know anything about finance. So.
And we also, I think to mom and dad's credit, we weren't that competitive because we each got to thrive and choose our own paths. And it wasn't like we were figuring out who was scoring more goals in the same soccer game because we didn't even play the same sports. So the fact that we could do different things and not ever nurture any kind of competitive spirit was a really healthy thing, I think.
With all that said, we keep talking about how we want to raise our kids so closely. We're already planning on sharing a nanny, and we live so close in Brooklyn. And I think it'll be interesting when we start having activities for them as they start to get a little older, how much of that we can do together, because we really do want them to spend a lot of time together.
And
yeah, your children will be more like siblings than like cousins, I think.
That's the hope. Our beloved babysitter chimed in to say, we had such different personalities. He remembers that from an early age, we had different personalities. I think in the beginning, I was more outgoing.
We have another really good question that just came in, which is, how are the boys handling this twin pregnancy? Mom, what do you think?
Oh, you have the best boys.
We do.
You really do. I mean, first of all, they left their beloved New York City to move into the country, into the girl's dad's house, which is a beautiful, 200-year-old farmhouse in the middle of the country in Chadsport, Pennsylvania. Quite a departure from Brooklyn and everything that New York has to offer. So that in and of itself, I think, speaks volumes for both your husbands. And I think they've been very gentle and very understanding and very excited too.
They do make their fair share of jokes. For the people listening and watching, Lizzie and I really did not plan on getting pregnant at the same time. and 2019 was a hard year for pregnancies, and 2020 was the year when we got pregnant 5 days apart, and the boys just cannot let us live it down. We got married 3 months apart. We do everything together. We're inseparable. So they love to joke.
But they think we planned
that. We planned this.
They think we rigged it. But
and
we
this is our master plan against them. So they really like to have a lot of fun joking. But I think deep down they're both really excited. And I think that the 4 of us can go through this together. I think we're all going to we do appreciate it. And I think we'll continue to appreciate it.
And speaking of the boys and family, another good question for you, Mom, what role did your family members play with raising your kids? Were they close by to help?
Yeah, that's a great question too. My mother my parents lived about 2 hours from Wilmington, but my mother did spend the first 2 weeks of your existence with me in our small little row house in Wilmington, Delaware. And thank God she did, because I was just a little bit beside myself with lack of sleep. And I can remember sobbing one night and saying, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do with 2 babies. I didn't even know what to do with 1 baby. How am I going to do this? And she was just, as you remember her, just so amazing and so loving and so supportive. So having her with me those first 2 weeks was really just a godsend. You know, Daddy, as a dentist, was able to leave his office and be home by 5 o'clock or come home at lunchtime. So he was really hands-on and a great help. And his parents lived in Wilmington. Granny still lives in Wilmington. And they too were very helpful, very hands-on, would, come over and give me a break if I needed a break. So I had a lot of good family support.
Obviously, having 2 in the beginning is so overwhelming, especially when you're expecting 1. But as time went on, was 2 actually a blessing because we could entertain each other? I mean,
absolutely. I can remember wallpapering the powder room in our little house, and you guys were, I know this is probably horrible, people will hate me, but you were in a playpen in the room right next to me, and you guys were so happy with each other. And Lizzie, you would be picking all the little fuzzies off the playpen, because Lizzie was always involved in anything that was little and wanting to make it perfect, I guess. And I would be watching you and doing the wallpapering, and yeah, it was great. I don't think that would be so easy with a singleton.
Well, we've been entertaining each other ever since. So.
Thank you.
That's very true. So is there anything that your 60-year-old self would tell your 28, 30, 40-year-old self about parenting or motherhood, or how it would all work out looking back?
Well, one thing, I think I was always so sort of compulsive about having everything done well, and I probably still am that way. So I wanted to have all the laundry done. If I didn't have my cleaning gal coming in that day, which I didn't, maybe once a week, I wanted to have everything just so. And I probably did some of those chores and didn't spend as much time sitting on the floor playing puzzle or whatever we were playing. So I guess I would say just let go of that stuff. That stuff is always there, and enjoy every moment, because I can't believe we're having this conversation that I'm going to be Mama Kim and you guys are going to have babies, because it just goes by in an instant, in the blink of an eye. So yeah. To the extent that you can enjoy the time and not worry about some of those other responsibilities, enjoy the time.
And those other responsibilities and distractions are really so much worse now with technology. I think, we're all on our phones too much. We're all on our email, and obviously it's only up to us to change that. So I'm saying that as a criticism of myself, but I think that Lizzie and I will really need you to remind us to be present as much as possible.
Yeah.
I definitely remember you not only as being present, but just being our friend ever since we were little kids. But you were a friend and a cool mom without being a cool mom who gets walked all over, if that makes sense. I think.
Oh yes, we had rules and structure.
We had rules. So the next question we have, because I think this is a very delicate balance. I know I did my fair share of eye rolling in middle school, I know, but in general, I remember very, very few fights. I don't remember us getting all that upset with each other growing up. And I am wondering how you achieved that very delicate balance of being cool and being our friend, but also making us respect you, and putting rules in place that we didn't resent.
Thank you, Lizzie. That's a lovely compliment. So first of all, I think when you guys were, apart from rolling your eyes, which it's true you did, you were basically, you were really good kids and young women. And when you weren't, I never knew about
Good.
it.
So all the credit goes to us.
So thank you for that. And you know, I'm a big, you know this, I'm a very big believer in structure. I was from day one. I kept a written schedule on the dresser in your baby's room of every hour that I nursed you, like when I changed diapers. I mean, structure was really important to me. It's how I guess I thrived. And we had structure as you grew up. You know, you went to a fairly structured K-12 environment. We had rules. You went to bed at 7 o'clock every night until you were about 12, I think. Your babysitter on the line will honestly remember that, I'm sure. So I think that structure was really important, and I believe that all three of you thrived on that structure. And the other thing I think is that because you're twins, and because you were the youngest in your grade, I think you were a little bit maybe behind, you know, not in a negative way, but just behind all of like the social activity, some of the more negative behavior of some of your contemporaries. And you always had each other. So it wasn't like you had to keep up with what other kids were doing, because you always had one another as your best friends.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good
definitely. And hopefully our kids will have each other in the same way. But it is a good way of putting it. And it's something that we think about a lot, because I feel like even if we said, hey, can we do a sleepover at this person's house? And you said no, maybe we were mad for 5 minutes, but then like by the next day we were like, hey mom, let's do this together. Like I don't remember staying mad. So I think that's something Peter and I often talk about, who will be the bad cop. And I don't want to have to be the bad cop, but I already think he's going to be a softie. So I don't know who's putting all these rules in place, which I know you did, but you did it in a way that still made us love you.
And I think you can be really consistent, you and your husband's really consistent. I think Daddy and I were really good because we agreed on how to parent and raise kids. We rarely do we disagree. So having that consistency between the parents provides some, you know, pretty good guidance and lanes to stay within.
advice. Yeah. Was that natural or was that planned? Like, would you sit down and say?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think we come to parenting from very similar perspectives, and I think we would discuss things, and you know, we didn't always agree, but for the most part we did. But we would discuss, you know, how we wanted to parent, and we loved being together as a family and doing stuff with you guys.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's our fun. I mean, that's our memories. Our memories are on Saturday. We weren't begging to go to the mall and, you know, sit on the curb at the mall. We always wanted to be with mom and dad, going on a bike ride or going on a family hike. And there were lots of family hikes. I think we complained about real time, but I think shortly thereafter realized that that was the most fun thing to be doing.
Definitely. Okay, so now a bit about your career, because you were practicing law, and then you eventually stopped to be a full-time mom and then re-entered the workforce some 15 or so years later, and you did it with a bang. You now have a really incredible position. You work a lot. You get a lot of media attention. Obviously, re-entering the workforce is tricky, and we are kind of curious both about whether you've experienced ageism, what you gained from re-entering as someone who had the achievement of motherhood behind them, but what you maybe lost by taking off those critical years in your 30s and 40s. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think I worked part-time at the law firm until 1989. So you guys were probably, you know, kindergarten, first grade-ish. And then I stopped working, however, did some part-time work, some contract work for our Division of the Arts, some other contract work, and did a lot of volunteerism. And you know this because I was at Tower Hill School as president of Homan School, and very engaged in your school, as well as in our community, both on the Foster Care Review Board and at the University of Delaware. So really striking a balance, whether it was a career or more of a volunteer addition to my parenting and mothering capacity. So I think that's really important to note that, yes, I was off for, I don't know, it's quite 15 years, but like 10 or 12. There was balance. And I will say the happiest was when there was balance. If there was not that balance, I would struggle. So I re-entered the workforce as you all were in high school, knowing that all three of you were going to fly the nest, pretty close period of time together. And like, then what? My life had been so focused on being a mother and a parent that I knew, just knowing myself, that I better be prepared for when you were in college and Alex was, obviously in his later years of high school. And I also knew that I wasn't really interested in returning to the practice of law, and law had changed so much. But I was really driven by my passion for social change in our communities, and especially around issues of social justice, be it education or health, currently food and health, really driven by just this process of social change. And I guess I was fortunate, and I was probably really naive. First of all, I didn't think I was old. I guess I still don't think I'm old. And I had such a passion and drive to change the world, and really wanted to do that. And, I think I was so determined and so open that doors just sort of opened up for me. So when I re-entered the workforce, it was on a very part-time basis at our local community foundation, the Delaware Community Foundation. And shortly upon my time there, I discovered a model of philanthropy called social venture partners and venture philanthropy. And I ended up co-founding the Delaware affiliate of the SVP model. Certainly I didn't intend to go back to work and start a foundation, something that really was not in my skill set at all. Certainly was within my passion and my purpose. And really, that was 20 years ago. And just looking back, every step since then sort of looks like it was planned. It wasn't necessarily planned at all, but every step certainly laddered to where I am today. And, just such an honor to, as you mentioned, to be the first female president of the Campbell Soup Foundation and to lead the work that my team and I lead. And shout out to Rita, one of my team members who I know is on this call, and Kate and Amanda, who are on my team, who are your age with young kids. And, right now I have so much respect for my team members who are at home, with Amanda with 3 kids under age 5, Kate with 2 kids under age 5, juggling work, juggling home. I honestly don't know how they do it. I don't know how I would do it. But in any event, my career path has really been so rewarding and significant and meaningful. So I always encourage young women who have taken time off that, yeah, it is possible to reinvent yourself and to re-enter the workforce and to do something that is truly meaningful. At age, I was 46 years old.
It's very young.
But I mean, looking at your career now, you would think that you'd never taken a break.
Yeah,
I mean, no one would know that you hadn't been in the corporate world your entire life.
I was going to ask, for people who are thinking about re-entering the workforce, who may have left for whatever reason, be it getting fired in this crazy time or taking time off from motherhood, do you have advice for people when they have a gap on their resume and they're interviewing and they're explaining that gap that their competitor might not have? They might have work, all the way through, but obviously that doesn't necessarily make them a better candidate. Do you have tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, being a parent or a full-time mother is a remarkable skill set that lots of leaders in corporate America certainly appreciate, because managing a family is sometimes it's like, being the captain of a team in the Army or the Navy. And I have to say, I think I use a lot of the skills I learned parenting as I manage teams now. And I would also say to any of your younger listeners who are questioning, taking time off, re-entering, feel free to share my email with everybody, because I'm more than happy to share my experience and to offer any kind of guidance that I can.
That's so gracious.
That's awesome.
So we'll ask for your advice then, and we know your email. But you see, Lizzie and me really like our first real baby has been Lizzie Fortunato Jules, and for the past 12 years we work pretty tirelessly, even now, for the company. And of course, our team has grown, and we've got 13 people now, and we feel confident that we can delegate and all of that. But I think still, I mean, there's still plenty of late nights where we're committed to the business and weekend work and things like that. We're lucky we have husbands who cook and pick up after us because we're working a lot. So,
and cook.
And they're better cooks too. As we think about balance, which is a hard word, or even just trying to do it all, and because we won't leave the workforce, we don't think in the same way that you did, what kind of advice can you give us as we too try to keep all the balls in the air?
So you're not going to do everything perfectly.
Right.
And likely you're not going to do any of those things perfectly. But you are going to do the best that you can do, because that's who you are and that's how you always will operate. And you got to go easy on yourselves, because the demands today are so hard on our women, I think, to do everything well. And even though there are more probably parenting duties shared between husband and wife, at the end of the day, the bulk of those responsibilities fall on the mom.
Oh, I saw an interesting survey that said 45% of men think they do more homeschooling, and 3% of women confirmed that fact during.
So, there you go.
There you go. There you go. Exactly.
So can you talk, just for people who are less familiar with it, a little bit about your role during COVID? Your role at Campbell Soup is to bring food equity and justice to Camden in particular, where Campbell's is located. And you guys have initiated a lot of different platforms by which to measure food access and to improve food access. What exactly are you doing, as you've called it, a frontline funder during COVID, to sort of extenuate your role in the food space?
Gosh, thank you, Catherine. That was really kind. So first of all, I'm honored to lead this work, but I have an amazing team, not only my little team who I mentioned, but really across our business and our enterprise. We have 33 communities. So what we've done during the past 10 weeks now is really mobilize all of the remainder of our fiscal year's foundation budget, but also mobilizing product. And to date, we've distributed about $4.5 million in both funding and food to 33 communities. So you're right, traditionally, because Camden is home and has been home for 150 years and a high need community, a lot of our philanthropic focus has been in Camden. But I have to say, with this COVID pandemic, we certainly have had a very democratic focus on all 33 of our communities, and have mobilized primarily food and funding that supports food access to those communities. Because as we all see, just last night on the news, 1 in 5 children in America is not getting enough to eat right now. It's shocking. And my sense is that those statistics, as more people go on unemployment, are going to get higher and higher. And we see that our food banking partners in the food banking network have seen up to a 300% increase in demand. So food is, it's one of the vital things that we all need to live. And certainly Campbell Soup Company is committed to continuing to meet all of our demands as a manufacturer, which have risen dramatically during this time, but also to support our communities as best we can. And I'm really so proud of the company I work for, not only to give me some of the freedoms I have to support our communities, but also the dedication of our company, of Campbell Soup Company, to our communities, to our employees, and to our consumers.
For people who are wanting to help, is the best way to help monetarily donating to food banks? Or I know it's a hard time to volunteer because, everyone wants to stay at home, but are there ways that you can recommend helping?
Yeah, in fact, you should have been on one of our meetings today. So we do have a special fund set up, a COVID-19 fund, which obviously is a fund that any of our employees can contribute to, that benefits 4 national organizations specifically focused on COVID-19. But there are actual now online opportunities for volunteering. Cool. And we made that resource available across our enterprise today for our employee engagement opportunities. But some of the things that our employees have been doing, our employees have made 7,000 masks to make sure that all of the employees in our plant sites in the very early stages of this had masks while we were still waiting for PPE. So there's been just an outpouring of support from our employees to do whatever they can. We are not encouraging our employees to go out and do hands-on volunteering right now. We're more encouraging either mask making or virtual volunteering, but lots of virtual volunteering opportunities. Read a story to a child. Give career advice, do interviewing skills with people who are entering the workforce. So there's a lot
that you would recommend, like for all of us who are listening who aren't Campbell's employees but who want to give back from our homes. Are there any good platforms that you know of for things like volunteering to read a story to a child in need?
You know, I don't know of any offhand. I do know that we just signed up with Meals on Wheels, and Meals on Wheels has about 3,000 different affiliate programs in our country, and they have online volunteering opportunities. I know we made the Meals on Wheels virtual volunteer opportunity available. So that's one. Uh, and somebody's saying contact local libraries, which is a great recommendation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. You know, if you can give a break to a parent who has a lot of kids at home and read stories virtually to those kids, how awesome is that?
Yeah.
So speaking of being at home and being quarantined, one thing that we've talked about in the beginning, before we came back to New York, Kath and I kept saying, you know, we hope mom's not lonely. She lives alone. But you've lived alone for 15 years. So maybe in some ways you were more prepared for quarantine than some of us. For anyone who is maybe recently single or who is struggling with quarantine, maybe it's someone who had roommates, but their roommates left and returned to other places. What are some of the tips you have for living alone? Kath and I always comment how we're inspired by your confidence and independence and
social life.
And we really haven't had the experience of living alone because we've always had each other. So for people who are dealing with being alone right now, any tips?
Well, first of all, thank you for your compliments. And I have to say, I've been spoiled for the past, I don't know, 7 of the 10 weeks I've been at home, because you guys are 6 miles down the road. And after the first 2 weeks of quarantine, I get to see you a lot. And that certainly has helped. I think for me, you're right. I've lived alone for 16 years, so it's not new. And I love the space where I live. And as you know, I'm across from about 57 miles of contiguous trails. And getting out on the river or for a run on the trails is a bit of a lifesaver. My lifestyle has changed dramatically because I used to travel so much, both for business and for pleasure. And I was on the go a lot. So my lifestyle has sort of screeched to a halt, albeit still really consumed with lots of work. The social aspect of life has changed dramatically, and that's been hard. That's been an adjustment. I do get out on the trail at a social distance with a few of my close friends for either a walk or a run, and I try to do that, 4 or 5 times a week. Obviously seeing you guys, which has been a blessing. And then just trying to keep up with all of my friends on calls, well, I do have a portal, thank you, Alex Fortunato, which is also a godsend to have right now, so we can do conferencing with our family and video calls. So that's great too. But I think you have to make a real effort to stay in touch, because it's easy to be reclusive and not so healthy. And of course, as you know, I'm going to get a dog.
Yeah, Mom's most exciting development from quarantine is she's now on a list for a dog. So
we're getting babies and she's getting a puppy, and they're all going to play together.
We can all go in the playpen together. So speaking of, what are you most excited to do with, or maybe share with, whether it's a story or to give, if it's something you want to buy for them, a favorite toy that we had, with your future grandchildren? Are there any specific things that that you can't wait to sort of share just between you and them?
Yeah, so I don't know that it's a thing as much as it is my time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just can't wait to be a grandmother and be a support to you all, and also to develop this bond with my grandchildren. I saw the bond that you all had, both with my parents and with Daddy's parents, and it's like none other. And I especially remember when you were growing up, we lived within walking distance of Daddy's parents. And you would go through the woods, the back way to their house after school. I'm sure Granny baked something special for you. And it was a very, very special relationship. And I think I had that very same special relationship with one of my grandmothers. And I just can't wait to have that with my grandchildren and to share that. So I think of that more than necessarily a tangible thing.
Yeah. Well, one thing we were talking about is in the beginning, when we're both needing that help that you spoke of Nama giving to you when you were in tears, like Catherine and I were joking, she's going to be sprinting back and forth between each of our houses. And we don't know how we're going to split up your time. That, I think, is one of our concerns, is like, no, I get mom. No, I get mom. So we're going to have to be like picking out of a hat or drawing straws or something.
Yeah, well, probably the babies will be on somewhat different schedules, so maybe we can just balance between everybody's schedule when I can be available, and then it'll bring back memories of never sleeping.
It sounds like the absolute worst deal for mom, truly.
Well, the other thing is Catherine and I have always, taken inspiration trips and work trips together, and we are already talking about when we'll be traveling again, and then you get both kids, so there you go.
Mom comes and we leave the kids with the husbands. I think that's better. Mom's go on our inspiration trip. So Lizzie and I have this little sneaky trick where we have to go to Paris for work twice a year, but buying a plane ticket from Paris to the south of France or to Italy or to Morocco is $100 versus from America being $1,200. So we've been tacking on inspiration trips to our Paris work trips, and Mom's been tacking on inspiration trips to our Paris work trips. So I think that Lizzie often says to me when we're kind of at our most inspired, we can't not do this when our life changes. And of course our life will change in a huge way, but we still want to prioritize those really special times where we're still traveling and still spending time, the three of us, when our kids are still really young and we can sneak away and not let them know.
I totally envision pushing a double stroller down the Champs-Élysées while you are at Paris Fashion Week, and I am grandmama with these two lovely babies. They'll be dressed to the nines, have no fear. I'll be sitting in a cafe, having coffee or wine or whatever with my two babies in the baby stroller while you're at the runway shows.
It sounds great. I can't wait till we can travel again.
And speaking of dressing to the nines, do you remember, you spoke earlier about loving to go back to school shopping for us or getting little matching outfits. Do you remember any favorite outfits that Lizzie and I loved or that you loved that you got for us that sort of were defining during our childhood years?
A few, I do. I mean, I remember buying you your first Christmas dresses, and it was like this, I don't know, this beautiful velvet, deep red. One was deep green with white lace collars. I cried when I bought them.
Where did you buy them?
At a little store in Centerville that is no longer, a beautiful children's store in Centerville, Delaware. And then I also remember some summer dresses from Marjorie Speakman, which was the children's store in Greenville, that Catherine, I think yours was blue and white. Also, it was sort of sleeveless and a big ribbon around the waist and a full dress. And Lizzie, I think yours was like pink and green and white, also sort of that same full style. And I can remember you like running through the yard with bare feet in these beautiful dresses.
And what about the skirt you brought back from France that Lizzie insisted on wearing on the first day she got it, despite the fact that it was 30 degrees outside?
Yeah, I think actually it was from London. And yes, I bought each of you skirts. And I think, Lizzie, you both were going on a field trip that had outdoor activities on this field trip. And because you were so well dressed but ill dressed, that you had to spend the entire time inside and missed all of the outdoor activities.
I remember we were in Colonial Williamsburg and the group was making candles and chopping wood, and they had to take me inside because my knees were knocking. I was so cold, but I looked amazing. So
Lizzie, will you tell the audience about our first high school field trip to Washington, D.C.?
Oh, geez. I'll keep this short, but as you guys can probably tell, my interest in fashion has been with me since I was a little kid, probably thanks to my mother who was buying me all these fabulous outfits. And we were on a high school field trip to Washington, D.C., and I think we were given a few hours of free time to go visit national monuments or what have you.
The Smithsonian.
And I hightailed it to Betsy Johnson, where I bought platform black leather peep toe shoes, which in retrospect,
it sounds worse than it was.
I don't know about cool. But at the time, I just thought they were the best thing ever. And I got back on the school bus with a shopping bag, and the teacher's jaw just dropped. She couldn't believe it. But
well, also, how did you even have the spending money?
That was babysitting money. And I think I had those shoes for about 12 years. I got a lot of use out of them. So that was good.
Cost per wear was definitely justified.
Catherine, what about your belt story for your interview?
That was
Lizzie too.
Oh, that was Lizzie too. Sorry.
One, but when we were in college, our dad gave us each a small amount of money when we started interviewing for jobs after college, and we said, Dad, we don't have a suit or like any professional clothing to wear, so he gave us each a gift of some money to.
It was probably like $120 $25, which we all know that in the 2000s you can't really buy a suit with that. The suits that we wanted to buy were $125.
Catherine went to the mall and bought a black suit and then proceeded to interview on Wall Street with her black suit and got a killer job. And I went to a store and fell in love with a belt that was more than my suit budget. And I told the lady I'm supposed to buy a suit, and she said, buy the belt, I'll loan you a suit. And I still wear the belt all the time. So let's talk about good investments.
And I got rid of my suit 15 years ago. So Lizzie's whole lesson here is buy few things, buy well, and if you've got to spend a lot to invest in pieces that will last you 20 years, jewelry and accessories included, by all means.
Okay, and just because we've had so much fun shopping with you over the years, one other fashion question, Mom, is what are any favorite outfits that you yourself have worn that maybe either we've helped pick out or it would be something that you've worn for a fun event that we've been part of?
Let's talk about your weddings.
Even better.
Because each of your weddings, I wore dresses that you both selected that I probably never would have selected. And loved each of them so much. So yes, I think you've been a big influence on my style and my fashion. I tend to be probably a little bit more conservative and a little bit more, simple, elegant, not always so much fun in my dress. But you certainly opened up a whole new way of my looking at my wardrobe, and you certainly have introduced me to new brands and many of your good friends who are your buyers and have some great stores in this country who I love to support and love to support their fashions.
So Mom has become a very good supporter of our wholesale accounts, like she's saying. So if we go to Charleston or to Texas or to Chicago, she might go to those same cities for a work trip and say, I've got a few hours free. Where's the store that you sell it here? And she'll come in and the sales girl will say, are you wearing Lizzie Fortunato earrings? And Mom will say, Lizzie Fortunato is my firstborn. So then she strikes up a great relationship with the sales team, is often extremely supportive and shops small from a lot of our small boutiques that we work with. And as a result, has a fantastic closet of the clothes that Lizzie and I didn't even need to teach her because she figured it out all on her own.
Totally.
But I mean, it does sort of come around and go around. I think we all share a love, for being together, but also definitely for fashion and dressing up and having fun with each other.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Totally. Well, we are running out of time, but one last question that we've been asking everyone is any tips for self-care or indulgences during this time of COVID? We've had good recommendations about books, TV shows, beauty products, but cooking, any tips?
Well, I'm a big proponent of taking care of oneself. I do it poorly. It's been a lifelong exercise for me to try to do it better. So for me, there was a time in the very first few weeks of this where I couldn't stop working. We were drinking from a fire hose trying to get funding and product all over the country, and I just couldn't put it down. So just walking away from the work and the stress of the work to have some time to myself. And I'm a big outdoors person, as you know, so being outside, taking a run, taking a walk, just really enjoying this incredible beauty of spring this year is so important. So I think just having some time to yourself, time to reflect, time to be quiet is really important, and a good self-care component that I try to practice. I try to practice it every day.
I love that. And I think that's something we'll need to keep in mind even after we start to get over the hump of COVID, but we enter the phase of motherhood, and
which is going to last a lot longer than quarantine, I hope.
and we're trying to, as Catherine said, balance it all and balance our small business and managing our team and managing our new families. I think the tip of remembering to take some time for yourself is very important. So thank you for that.
My COVID secret weapon has been a cross-stitch kit I got online, and I haven't done cross-stitch since 6th grade, so 30 years ago, 25 years ago. But it's been a really fun distraction that, if I'm too tired to read or if I'm just overwhelmed with screen time, it's been nice to actually have a little project that is completely separate from all the other projects in our life.
Another project you've had that I think has been so commendable, and indeed I'm in awe of the two of you through the past 10 weeks, is your ability to innovate And not only to keep this business afloat during a really stressful time, to keep all of your employees on board, employed, paid, but your ability to innovate and to be creative during this time, doing these women's coffees, doing some of the things that you've done that have inspired new business ideas and opportunities. You know, it would be so easy to get down. Oh, poor me, I'm 7 months pregnant. There's a pandemic going on. I'm not in my home. I'm in the middle of nowhere in the country. And I have this business and I have accounts canceling right and left. And yet you have taken the high road, as you always do. And you have found the positive in this situation, both personally and professionally. And I know that you are going to have business opportunities as a result of the innovation that you've had. And it makes me beyond proud. And I actually think maybe Harvard should do a business review case study of Lizzie Fortunato.
Well, thank you, Mom. You are our #1 super fan and super mom. And
it's true. And someone just said it's because we have each other. And I truly think that. I think when one of us is down, the other one brings the other one up and vice versa. So sometimes I'm sleeping late or I'm grouchy and Lizzie's carrying the ship, and other days she's having a bad day, or I think you had a temper tantrum about your computer the other day, and I steered the ship that day. And I truly think over the past 12 years of entrepreneurship, you've got your ups and downs, but having a person who you're this close with and can act honestly with, and who steers things when one person's feeling low, is life-changing.
And I hope our kids are friends in that way. I think when we first found out that we were pregnant 5 days apart, we both had panics because we truly spent all of 2019 trying to stagger. We said, you know, we kept saying to each other, if we're out of work at the same time, it's going to be a, excuse my language, shit show. And as it turns out, we're going to be out of work at the exact same time. But now looking
and
at
it's still going to be a shit show.
Yes. Well, A, and B, how lucky that our kids are going to have a buddy around them all the time. So someone's asking, but I'm due July 21st. Catherine's due July 26th. She's measuring early, so we're hoping for the same day.
We are betting on the same day. We will take bets. Maybe that should be our newest business opportunity, a little online gambling ring where we all go on Lizzie Fortunato and put a due date. Maybe the correct due date gets a credit to our website or something.
That'll be fun.
Our brand manager's probably just shaking her head right now, but I love a little healthy competition.
So, and then the other thing I was just going to say is, in addition to having each other, we have the most amazing mom. So, Mom, thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
Been there for everything, highs, lows, and everything in between. It's so nice that we get to spend this time together now that we're home in Delaware, and we can't wait for the next phase.
For those of you listening, if you have friends who need a little healthy mom advice, who need a little pick-me-up about how to balance everything, this is going to be on our IGTV, and it's going to be on our blog, both places come this weekend. So a little bit of coffee listening over the weekend. We've gotten so many nice compliments. Thank you for everybody who's engaged and sort of following us as we go from right out of college to 20-somethings to 30-somethings now to letting our mom become a grandma. So we don't use the word grandma. She's going to be boss mama Kim, something like that. But anyway, on to the next adventure. We've got another Creative Women's Coffee with 2 amazing guests next week. Ann Mashburn, the incredible owner of Her Namesake Boutique, and Yolanda Edwards, a former travel editor who now has the YOLO Journal. The 2 of them do a ton of work in Italy, and we're going to be talking about travel and what that means in the world of COVID when you've got a brand or a business that depends on it. So please join us next week. Keep them coming. Come on and register for our next Zoom call. And thank you guys for all of your nice comments. Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day. Thank you, Mom. We love you.
Love you.
Love you guys. Love you.